Today we are going to be setting up our worm bin, otherwise known as the vermicomposter. Vermes is actually a Latin root meaning worm. So vermicomposter is a derivative of the Latin root vermes. Vermicomposting is using worms to eat food and other organic matter, which then goes through the worm, comes out the end of the worm, and when it comes out the end, it is called worm castings. And it is now nutrients that is added to the soil that plants use to grow big and healthy and strong. So they actually contribute to putting the organic matter into the soil. So plants can actually live without soil. They don't need the nutrients, but the nutrients enable them to be healthier, bigger, stronger plants. So what happens is decomposers eat the decaying and organic matter, and then it goes back into the soil, and then the plants use it. They take it up through the soil when they're taking up water, and that's how they use it. So this is how our worm bin works. Normally we have this in our classroom, but of course now we're not in the classroom, so I have it here at home so I can be keeping an eye on it for us. So this is how the system works. So this is exactly the one that we have. So we start out down here, and then we put our worms in there, and we put some things for them to eat, and then that's going to start to get full of the worm castings. And when it starts to get full, then we add the next layer, and so then the worms, we start putting the food here in this one above it, so then the worms will crawl up through there to get to the food, and then we are left with this that the worms are no longer in, and that is our worm castings that we can then use to put on plants. And we normally use it in our school garden. So that's what we will do with that. And then once the next one is filled, then you continue to go up. So the worms continue to go up until, and then once you clear this one out of the castings, and you put that back up. So it's a constant rotating system. And then when the liquid, because you have to keep it pretty wet, not too wet, but wet enough, and then the liquid drains down, which is also full of nutrients that the plants really like, that you can actually water your plants with. It's a highly concentrated, nutrient rich liquid, and it's got a little nozzle here that you can get the liquid out. So that's how our worm bin works. What we're going to be using is red wigglers. The scientific name, Isentia fotida. And this is the actual worms that we're going to put in there. They actually have different names. Sometimes they're called tiger worms. You can see the stripes on there. They're very stripy, really stripy tail on this one. They are used primarily, well, not primarily, but they are used a lot for composting. So if you ever order worms to start a worm bin, then you will usually be getting red wigglers. They breathe through their skin. They don't have lungs. So it's important that they are kept wet, but they don't like to be too wet. They are 90% water, so very important that they are kept wet. Otherwise, they dry out pretty easily. They can eat 25% to 33% of their body weight per day. So they're pretty healthy eaters. They can really go through things. And they live about a year in a vermicomposter, as long as you take care of them. So we gathered our worms, and so I'm going to show you a little video here of how we gathered our worms to start our bin this year. Okay, so I just came out here to my food compost bin, and it's one of those big green tubs that looks like that. You can spin it. And that is where I put all of our food waste at my house. So I came out here, and it has gotten worms in it. over the years. I don't know how. I think because of some kind of lawn trimmings or grass clippings or something I put in there. Worms got in there. So it now is quite abundant with worms. And I just opened it up because I was going to grab some for our worm bin, and they were all over the top of it. So I scooped these already in here, and I'm going to get some more because we want a lot in our worm bin, because the more that we have, the faster they will work. So I'm going to pick up some of these beauties up and put them in our container for our worm bin. They like to really clump together. Let me get this guy that you held out down here. You with your friends. Okay, so we're gonna get some of these guys. Here's a whole lot of them. Wow, awesome. Oh, he's squirming around. Oh. Okay, I'm gonna get these guys. Put them in my hand here. Put them in there. Oh, he's trying to get up. Get back in there. You can see they get kind of long. You can see that guy stretching out, but they're pretty skinny. Here's some more over here on the side. Let's scoop those up. And those. And if you see inside of here, that is some grass that I put in there. Last time I mowed the grass, I think. And so underneath that is where all the food is. So I'll give it a turn here upside down so you can see what it looks like. Let me get these guys here underneath there. So give me a sec and I will turn it over for you. So worms will reproduce quite a bit. So now I don't know how the worms got in that bin that I have, but they have really grown in population. Worms are hermaphroditic, just like banana slugs. They are both male and female. They lay an egg case that has about 3 to 5 baby worms in it, and the red wigglers, they will live for about a year. So they are reproducing pretty quickly. And so that's why the population has really taken off there. So let's take a look at what our compost is going to end up looking like. Okay, so I flipped it over. You still see some worms on this end as well. And then inside, it just looks like it's pretty moist, pretty wet. So just looks like mud, but that all used to be food. So those are all food scraps. Now I'm guessing that right there is an avocado shell, because they usually take a long time to decompose. I love my avocados, and yes, that's exactly what that is. So you can see there's the shell of the avocado. And something else I noticed in here, that I must have dumped some takeout, because there's a plastic fork in there that got by me somehow. So I'm going to grab that guy, and you will see, oh no, that's one of my metal kitchen forks. That's not going to decompose. Well, I better take that in and run it through the dishwasher really well. Gonna need that. I gotta be more careful what I put in there. So you can see that that's what it's going to turn into. So I'm going to use my compost fork now. All this mud here, this is just compost. So that's what it's going to turn out to be. So it's just nutrients, organic matter, probably a lot of worm castings as well, judging from all the worms that are in there. You can even see them on the side in there. So this is what our compost is going to end up looking like. So when organic matter decomposes and becomes nutrients that returns to the soil, this is the process. So this is what it ends up looking like. Just rich, healthy nutrients for plants. Okay, so now.
Okay, so I just came out here to see my on this end as well.
Okay, let me stop it. Okay. Okay, so what goes in a vermicomposter? You want to feed your worms vegetables, non-citrus fruits. You could put it things like tea bags, coffee grounds, coffee filters, grass clippings, weeds, dandelions, any kind of plant, basically. Paper products, paper plates, uh, shredded paper, newspaper, shredded cardboard, any kind of paper product. So that can all be decomposed. You do not want to put meat, dairy, oily food, citrus, salty food. The meat and the dairy that can attract critters that you don't want to have around if you have it outside. And also, it can be smelly and you can get some harmful bacteria and stuff kind of things in there. Oily food just isn't good for your worms. Citrus food is not good for your worms, and salty food is not good for your worms. So you want to keep those things out of there. You can also crumble up eggshells, and eggshells can go into your worm bin as well. So now setting up our worm bin. Let's get this thing started.
What we're going to do now is we are going to put the worm bin and all of its parts together so it can start its work. So the green is the actual worm bin itself. And you can see that it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 of these trays. These trays have holes in the bottom so that water can go through, the worms can climb through, because that's how they move from tray to tray. And then at the bottom, on the stand, is where the liquid parts of the worm compost collects. And that's called worm tea. And it's a highly concentrated liquid of nutrients that you can pour on your plants, and it's really good for them. You just don't want to give them too much because that can kind of overwhelm them sometimes too. So all you do is, when you need to have some worm tea, which you do not consume yourself, is for your plants. You just turn this nozzle and then it comes out. And then make sure you turn it back so it doesn't all drip out. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to put down, I'm going to put down some paper at the bottom so the worms don't climb through to the bottom, because I want them to stay in this tray and I don't want them to go lower. They can climb higher when they need to, but I don't want them to go any lower. So I'm going to put the paper there. Then the next thing I'm going to do is add our friends, the worms. So I've got those over here. So these are the worms that we collected from my compost bin. And there is quite a few. I would say a few hundred at least. So they are in there and they are going to be happy as can be. It is going to be a very nice home for our worms. Then I'm going to add the food. So I kind of cleaned out my kitchen here real quick. And this is the food that I found for them. So there's some old blueberries. There's some old spinach I got out of the refrigerator from one of my many decisions when I decided I was going to eat healthy every day. And then there's my avocado from this morning. One time I had an avocado pit in the worm bin that we had in our classroom, and it actually started growing a tree. So that was pretty cool. So I want to see if that happens again. And then I got a cut up banana. I think that's all. Spinach, some blueberries, an avocado, and some banana. So we're going to add that in here. Put it right on top of them. And then kind of spread that around so they can find the parts that they like. And put it near them so they can find it real easy. And then I have the bedding. So this is just grass that is from the last time I mowed my grass. It was quite some time ago because it's been pretty dry and hasn't been growing. I'm going to spread that around. And if you cover up the food really well, then you won't have a problem with fruit flies as much. So fruit flies sometimes on your food and they come off. So if we cover it up, then we won't have much problem. They won't be able to find it. And then I'm also going to put some shredded paper on there. So we'll put some shredded paper because shredded paper can't go in the compost. So I always just put it in the recycling. Sorry, it goes in the compost. It can't go in the recycling because the fibers are too small. So I always put it in the compost. And so we've got our bedding there, and I'm even going to throw in a couple pine cones, or not pine cones, fir cones from the Douglas fir trees. They're all over the place now. I'm going to see if the worms will eat those. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we can put, here's the paper that I had covering up the worms so they would stay happy. And then I'm just going to kind of put that on top of them as well, kind of keep some of that moisture in. And then I'm going to put the rest of the trays on. Oh, here's something really cool. So I've had this for quite some time in the classroom. A few years ago, we put in a milk carton from school lunch and looked into the compost. It wasn't the worm. I don't remember if it was the worm bin or just our regular compost. But the paper all composted away, but it was left with this plastic covering. So you would think that your milk carton is made out of paper, but it actually has this really thin plastic coating on it to obviously keep the milk from, dripping out. So that was kind of cool. And so this is the plastic outer covering. You can still see the printing on it. This part, where the nutrition part is, did not decompose. I don't know why. Maybe the plastic was too tight to it. Anyway, I've always thought that was really cool, so I keep that. So that's there. And then put the top on. We just got to make sure that it stays moist, wet, but not too wet. And I will be posting a picture of it each day. All right.
All right, so I'm actually not going to post a picture every day, but once a week we will try to take a look at it and see how it is doing. So now we have got our worm bin ready to go.